Hi class, my name is Lauren Scullion and I'll be showing you my charity proposal. My charity is called Farmers Feeding Families. It's a coalition for improving the quality of food offered in food banks. Before we dive straight into what this charity is, I created this based on my own personal experience during a time of my life where my family didn't have much money and we spent time once a week going to a food bank or a food pantry. And at that time, I noticed that most of the time, milk and fresh bread and vegetables were pretty unavailable. They get a lot of their food that's not donated from grocery stores, it's left over. And so there is definitely a need in food banks to get milk and bread to families that isn't old or stale, and milk that's actually not expired, things like that. So that's where I came up with the idea for this charity. I found when I searched about Texas farmers that they receive the most out of any other state in subsidies. They received $30.8 billion 1995 to 2014. So that puts them at the very top of the entire United States. 81% of the farms in Texas did not collect subsidy payments. So they were doled out, but they weren't collected. And what that means is that should the farmers choose to accept those subsidies, they would probably be able to make their harvests even more plentiful. So in North Texas, 2/3 of the people who use food banks choose between food, medicine, utilities, or transportation. They cannot have everything. So rather than eat, they'll buy their medicine or keep their lights on, or whatever transportation they need. Then in addition to that, Tarrant County, which is where I live, the Tarrant County food banks feed 50,000 people a week. That's 146 households per year. That's a startling number of people who aren't getting milk, they're not getting bread that isn't stale, and vegetables. So they're not getting nutrient rich foods. And as far as, these families who have to send their kids to school, you can't make a sandwich without bread. If your kids aren't getting fruits and vegetables, they're probably not living a healthy lifestyle. And in addition to that, some of these families do receive WIC and they'll get milk and cereal from there, but it's not a lot. So, some of these families don't qualify for WIC and they wouldn't get milk at all. So as I've said before, what my charity does is it provides milk, bread, and vegetables to local food banks and food pantries. This food comes from rotating farms based on which things the farm is growing, or cultivating. So dairy farms would rotate. In this way, it's not one farm's responsibility to provide donations to this charity. And then any costs that would be incurred are sponsored by local restaurants and grocery chains, places like Central Market, Whole Foods, any restaurant. And then, of course, it would be displayed in the restaurant that they sponsor this charity. It would be a great look for these companies and it would help the farms offset any costs. And then, of course, it would fund anything that the charity itself would need. Potential problems here that charity might find: since there's not a product sold, there's not any competitors, but the farming community may not be open to giving. Um, that would have to be, someone would have to contact all of them. And then some years, if the weather's bad, the crop may not be as plentiful. In Texas, we have a lot of drought, so that's a significant concern. And then the government may choose to lower subsidies for farms, so they may not have as much money to contribute to help grow things, and thus they won't be able to give a percent of their harvest every year, something as small as. So the persuasion that I just used in my proposal is, for my traditional approach, I used an emotional push appeal to begin with in sharing my story, and then I also used rational and cognitive appeals by showing the graph of the stats of what the farmers receive and then what Texas food banks actually do. So my contemporary approach, I used an enthymeme, and the major premise was that Texas farmers have a surplus of subsidy. The minor premise: Texas food banks need more fresh food. And my conclusion is you could give that extra food to low income families. Thank you so much.